I would tell technicians that are afraid of sales, you are the locked door between your clients and a perfect plumbing system, a perfect garage door, a perfect electrical system. If something is wrong, there is nothing bad that can come from at least mentioning it.
Just the thought of that hard conversation with the big numbers makes me want to curl up in a little ball.
Need and want are different things. Everything is self-serving. And so if you choose that your clients don't get to hear about how awesome their system can be, that's just you making yourself feel better.
Hey, what's up, Waste No Day? Super honored to have on one of Brian's guys, Mr. Jack Johnston, is joining us today. We're going to be talking about how he did not become a sales guy. We're looking forward to a great show. Welcome here, Jack.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Jack's been wanting to come on for a while, and loved Waste No Day before he even knew I was joining the Phoenix team, but certainly before I joined the team. And I made Jack a deal last year. I said, if you get to $1.5 million in revenue in a year, we'll do one. So he did $1.6 million last year. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Oh, yeehaw.
What is up? I'm pumped to be here, man. I have loved the show for a couple years now. Daryl introduced it to me probably 4 months before you came over, and I was super into it. And then I remember the day you walked into the shop, and I was like, "Hey, that's the guy."
Yeah, then you met Brian, and your listening went down.
There it goes. God, I'm gonna get back on Joe Rogan instead.
Putting my music back on. This guy's
comedy show. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, not only are you a Waste No Day fan, you're also a soon-to-be father, right?
I am, like any day now.
Yeah, man.
So
I'll say
first
God
one.
Willing.
Yeah, first
Yes.
one. God has certainly blessed us. We're very excited. My wife is getting real tired of being pregnant, so just hoping that the little one comes any day now. So everything's all set. We're excited. Soon to
Maybe
be
we'll
father.
throw a different intro on this, but by the time this podcast airs, Jack will be a dad.
Yeah.
I will be a dad by the time this podcast airs, so that's pretty exciting.
Congrats, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
The whole team's pumped about this one.
Yeah.
That baby's going to be a big part of our team's lives, I believe.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah.
Well, maybe the baby will be a 5th-generation plumber because you're a 4th-generation plumber. Jackson, why don't you start us off by telling a little bit about your history and how you got into the trades?
Yeah, so I went to community college. I was going to try my hands in politics, actually. And so I started at the illustrious Scottsdale Community College. And it just didn't work out, man. It wasn't really for me. And so I dropped my classes.
You took one field of crap and then you switched it over to another field of crap?
100%. But this one's more tolerable because toilets can't lie to you.
Less raw sewage in plumbing, turns out.
Yeah. And so I dropped all my classes and I went home and I told my dad, who was pumped. And then he said, you have to tell your mom, who was not pumped. And then I started at my uncle's plumbing company doing like new construction and remodel work and stuff like that for condos and apartment buildings. And he taught me everything I know about the plumbing side of things. And then him and I had an amicable separation. I just wanted something a little bit different. And I found Ben Franklin through the help of a very close family friend of mine. And yeah, man, that was 6 years ago. Now I've been with Ben Franklin for a while, and I tried to do everything I could to boost my numbers, build the team, help all the guys around me. And then about 2 years ago, I found myself really getting the guidance that almost 3 years ago now, getting the guidance that I really needed through things like Waste No Day and having Brian become a part of the team. And that has just grown and evolved into now I find myself doing everything I can to improve even the littlest, tiniest bits of my presentation, the way that I carry myself and the way that I help all of our guys. So it feels like 2 decades and it feels like 20 minutes at the same time. But
Yeah, I know that feeling with Brian. But talking about the show here and the inspiration that you've got from it, love hearing that. What's like a favorite episode of yours before we get into it?
I mean, everyone loves Seven Deadly Objections,
Yeah.
right? That's a real good one. I stole, especially earlier, like a few years ago, I stole a lot of stuff from Jamie Mellinger
Yep.
because I like to have a process, and he is extremely process oriented. Uh, I find that taking someone who's, relatively rigid in that regard, and then utilizing that with my kind of more charismatic, more friendly way of going about running service calls, I feel like blends very well. Uh, so Jamie Mellinger's episode's pretty early. Seven Deadly Objections is great. Jocko he's always good for any time you need a kick in the butt. I'd have to say that those are probably my top three. I love Doug
That's great.
Wyatt. Doug Wyatt is a really sharp cat. I like his stuff a lot.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would say those are a few of my favorites.
Yeah, charismatic and friendly. I can tell you and I are pretty much the same person. So this is going to be a great show, and looking forward to understanding more about how you did not become a sales guy. So we're going to be looking at it from that angle because, this process, I'm sure you didn't start off where you are right now. And so, a lot of our listeners or people who are familiar with the show, at least, adjacent familiar, I should say, there can be this stigma. Oh, they're all about sales, or that's all they ever talk about. I'm not one of those dudes. I'm not a sales guy, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think we try to demonstrate that there's a professional way of doing sales, and the stereotypical, whatever isn't what we're talking about. And so I got to ask Jack, what size is the cheap suit, and exactly how many old ladies are you ripping off these days?
Every single one that I can find. That's the quick answer. No,
Yeah.
I mean it's uh it's it's a super common stigma is guys who go in, especially in like the home services and areas with, similar charm, and it feels like an upsell. And why are we looking at why are we running a camera down the sewer line if you're here for a kitchen faucet estimate? Stuff like that. And the the thought of he's a salesman, he's just here to sell, he's just here to rip people off is how I felt for the first couple years of
Mm.
being in a service truck. And then Daryl Robinson, our operations manager, really opened my eyes to it a few years ago because I had helped someone uh, with something stupid. I can't really remember what it was, but then I had messed with their kitchen faucet a little bit, just kind of like tightened something down and put it back together. That ended up flooding their kitchen and causing like a huge callback and a bunch of issues.
Oh, wow.
And I I knew that that faucet should have been replaced, but I felt bad because we were already doing a couple other little things. I didn't want them to feel like they were getting ripped off, etc. And that was like a really big day for me is now I know if something is wrong, there is nothing bad that can come from at least mentioning it. So now, no matter what I see, no matter what I run into, I'm always going to at least mention it. I can operate with a clear conscience if I know that I at least gave them the opportunity to own whatever that item was, or the opportunity to repair slash replace whatever areas of concern they have. And so to those who say, oh, it's just a sales guy, he's just here to upsell, he's just here to rip people off, some are, I'm sure. But if you're doing it with good intentions and truly just giving people the opportunity to own things that could either improve or prevent anything from ruining their life, whether that be for a day, a week, a month, or years, I'd argue that's the best way to go about it. And as a matter of fact, you could be seen as the bad guy if you overlook something that is harming either a family or that family's home.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good summary of, I think, where you are at today, Jack. But I want to back up a little bit to kind of when you first entered into the field and I guess you kind of probably started in new construction. So maybe that wasn't so much of a customer facing, but when you made that jump into the client side of things and you're dealing with homeowners, where were you positionally on sales? On a spectrum, would you say that you were totally interested and hungry and you were like natural sales oriented, or were you completely adverse to sales and like, I don't, I want to be as far away from that type of person as it can be, or somewhere in the middle? Where would you have placed yourself?
I mean, if we put it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you absolutely hate sales, you can't stand people who do it, and 10 being Brian, who cannot wait to talk about it at all times, I'd probably a 3. I mean,
Yeah.
coming
Wow.
from new construction, we called service guys turd chasers. Like that's all you were, is just you went out, you just looked at little problems, and the goal was to upsell. And so when I started in a Ben Franklin truck, my goal was to go out and solve problems. Okay, your kitchen faucet is broken. We replaced the cartridge in that kitchen faucet. Like the biggest ticket I ever had was a water heater that was leaking,
Mm,
because the only solve for that is to replace the water heater. And we have 3 different options, and you bet I was quoting them for the cheapest one.
yeah.
And that's just kind of how I saw that being the best thing to do, because they were getting, what I thought was a good service, and they were spending the least amount of money. And then that kind of started to shift when I realized I wasn't making any money at all. That kind of sucked. And so then I started to think, okay, well, water pressure, can hurt stuff. Maybe talk to them about that. Or if they had angle stops that needed replacing because they had a bunch of corrosion on them, maybe I'd do a couple of those. And then I had a big moment where there was like a significant amount of water damage and whatnot. That really changed my perspective. So,
Mm. Yeah, and I'm interested in that mental journey for you because you described yourself as a 3, which means you were certainly more on the adverse side of things and
yep,
um, at best neutral, right? On a
at
good day.
best, yeah.
And so, I hear you mention about how you weren't making any money, and some people can translate that and say, "Oh, okay, so you started to ram stuff down people's throat just so you could pocket, a couple coins yourself." How does that justify things? So, help us understand like how you worked your way through that mentally to a place where like you didn't like you were becoming open to more sales, but was it all self-serving? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, everything is going to be self-serving to some extent. And so the things that I chose to start talking about were things that were big issues. Water pressure, obviously corroded shutoff valves, things, gate valve main entries, stuff that were bad, things that were, objectively broken or have damage or are leaking. That's kind of what I started talking to people about. And then I started realizing, you know, hey, I am helping these people out by preventing these issues. And so, no, everything is self-serving to a certain percentage. And I think the type of person you are determines that percentage.
Hmm.
Nowadays, I do things to almost 0% self-serve. I do things to provide for my clients and provide to my growing family. And the way that I do that is by offering things that people either can't live without or would really, really enjoy. And the way that I see it is, it's a I didn't used to, but the way that I see it now is, it is a disservice to leave people with a system, whether it be plumbing, HVAC, electrical, leaving them with a system that we know is going to break down. If someone has a toilet that, that supply line looks terrible, and that that shutoff valve isn't going to work, they're going to have to use it someday, and they're going to cause a lot bigger problems. And so I think going around finding ways to solve problems they didn't know they had and preventing them for the future is very important. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't realize. is knowingly leaving behind a system that you know is going to fail is more of a detriment than offering it in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's that horseshoe that you just described that's so interesting because, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you can correct me if I'm misstating. But at the beginning of your service career, you would have been adverse to sales, and you would have been, in your mind, um, I don't want to rip these people off, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh crap, I'm not making any money. So you kind of start like, well, I need to make some money. So, the maybe the self-interest or the self-motivation ticks a little bit higher. But then as you really understand what sales is and like what it does and how things should be presented, and if they are presented, it's done so as not a favor, but as like a professional opportunity for a homeowner to take action before you actually have to do the repairs and stuff like that. You kind of come back around to the other side of the horseshoe where now you're back, as you said, I'm not here for my own self-interest. I'm here to provide counsel to a client in need. And I think that's so cool how that happens. And everybody has their own journey through sales, myself included, in terms of where you start and where you end. And I think it's so neat to hear your story about how you were like adverse to sales and I'm not ripping anybody off. And then you trend towards like, well, we gotta do something here. And then you come back to the other side when you really understand what sales is and what it can be for a client and how it just becomes mutually beneficial. They're getting what they need. Yes, of course, you make an incentive based upon what you're doing, but it's not like all about the money anymore. It's about helping a client see through things and make changes and make preventions and make lifestyle improvements and all these things to better equip their home, protect their family, etc. I think that's great.
This is exactly kind of the road that Jack went down to get there. This is exactly what you hope to happen when you put a performance pay system in on a team, right? So it's not like the owner, manager, whatever, wants guys to go, oh crap, now I have to find something broken or make something broken, right, to produce con men, but they're saying now become Amazon, right? So I went on, what did I get? I got some what's it called? Carbo something,
CPAP machine,
carbogen powder the other day. Like just throw a scoop of carbs in my shaker bottle before lifting. I just got it yesterday, but I threw that in the Amazon cart, right? And I'm going to purchase it, and right below it, these 4 other things pop up, right? And it's like fish oils and magnesium glycate and
Rogaine.
a couple other supplements, and I'm like, excuse you. And I'm like, oh yeah. And it's funny enough, I was recently told to try magnesium to fall asleep better, right? So I'm like, yeah, why not? And I'm looking at the fish oil and I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be either taking that stuff or, eating more fish. So, and I ended up buying all 3, right? So I grabbed the other 2 things in the cart. I don't feel like Jeff Bezos took advantage of me in that situation. I feel like they came into my home, they repaired my plumbing system, they looked over the rest of the system, and they made some recommendations based on, with their experience with me, what they thought I might like. And as a result, they made 2 other transactions. This is what the owner of the company wants to happen when they put someone on performance pay. They're not hoping that you go in there and drill a hole in the top of the water heater or something like that, right? They're hoping that you find things a client would like anyway. It's why when the way we train with GACA, the GACA statement in the GoPro system, it's if I find anything that I think should be addressed or that I think you and the family would really enjoy having, would you like me to bring it to your attention or just keep it to myself? Right? And that's why. And the client says most of the time, almost every time, oh, definitely bring it to my attention. Yeah, we at least want to know about it, right? And there you go. And then throughout the conversation, much like Amazon, now they have way more data on me than you're ever going to get in a 90-minute chat with a homeowner. But you're, through questions and conversation, you're uncovering pain, and you're discovering desires and goals that they have for their family. And then the recommendations that Jack is going to make, that we're going to make down the road, are going to be directly tied to all of those. So yeah, he started with like, well, I decided I need to make a little more money, right? That's what we hope. Now it falls on the managers, the owner, I'll say the other technicians on the team, to hold the team accountable and make sure that nobody is getting to that point of desperation where they will say or do anything to make a sale happen, right? So you build into your culture the fact that that kind of thing is unacceptable, and you get really good at interviewing and hiring people that aren't like that. And then you build the culture so that it would be very difficult for someone to slip into that and it go unnoticed, right? And this is how you build a team of killers, right? Goal-oriented killers who are making way more money than their predecessors in the skilled trades did, like for sure the case for Jack and me. And they sleep well at night, and they hold their head up at the grocery store, right? And they don't ever feel like I make my bones by ripping people off, because that makes miserable people of the people doing it, much less the people getting taken advantage of. It's a good point, Jack. Way to not shy away from that, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it comes down to your character. Just don't suck, you know? If you suck, then you're going to be kind of a shady person. But if you don't suck and you are genuine with what you're doing and what your intentions are, and if you really just want to help improve people's lives, it's going to pay dividends. Last Christmas, my wife and I were at a church service, and I ran into a customer who, like a year and a half ago, I showed up for RO filters, and we ended up doing 2 tankless, water treatment system, a new RO, and a bunch of shutoff valves. And I'm walking through the main entrance in our church. I'm just going to find the restroom, and he stops me, and for like 5 minutes just talks to me about how awesome all their stuff is, how much they love all their stuff. And I remember that guy fought me tooth and nail to the point where I was like, I don't ever want to see this guy again. And I was like, this guy is being kind of a douche, pardon my language. And now he loves his stuff. And he made a point to stop me in public just to tell me that. And that's the level of service that we can provide. That's what I mean by like changing people's lives, is you show up and you just offer it to them. If they always have an option to say no, but they'll never know just how awesome their system could be if you don't tell them, if you don't offer it to them. And so I think that's the end of that horseshoe that I came to, Nate, is I thought that those guys who were installing tankless and water treatment and all that stuff were doing it for nothing but self-serving reasons. And now that I have heard nothing but resounding reviews, customer testimonies, and anything in between, all of the thank yous to the installers, the tips, everything that we could get, that just proves how much more appreciative they are when we do kind of, serve the steak or give them the opportunity to own everything that could possibly improve their life and their systems.
All right, Jack. So I think this will be interesting to hear some of your responses, and I'll give you a minute as I set this up to think through it. You're now on the other side of the horseshoe, and I want you to look across the horseshoe, right? Look back to the Jack of several years ago, the guy who was a 3 on interest of sales, the guy who didn't want to become the ripoff guy, the guy who didn't really, care or think about all that upselling and whatever. And I'm sure you had a whole bunch of stereotypical names for it and bad words and whatever. Think about that guy. And I want you to speak to that guy listening to this podcast. And I want you to give Jack's on the other side of the horseshoe advice to a guy who's sitting over there saying, yeah, I'm not going to ever become one of you guys. Like I'm not about that. You know, I make my life doing an honest day's living, whatever. You fill in the blank with whatever you were thinking back then. But I want you to speak your advice, your tips for the hesitant salesperson. Jack's tips for the hesitant salesperson that he was himself a number of years ago.
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say is look at the reviews, look at the testimonies, look at the way the interaction goes when I'm leaving the call. When I was going and doing the cartridge in the faucet or replacing the flapper in the 35-year-old toilet, those customers, it was thanks, have a good one. But now it is excitement. It is thank you so much. It's tips. It's 5-star reviews. It's customers texting me days and weeks later or finding me at church years later. I would say look at those testimonials and see just how much more they appreciate me instead of walking in and being the guy who I'm the plumber who can fix it. I can fix it. And now you go from that guy to seeing just how excited people are about their ADA height toilets and their tankless, and the fact that their wives are thrilled that there's no more spots on the glasses when they do the dishes. The littlest things people absolutely rave about years later. I mean, I had a guy who called me out and he had just bought a home and he pointed at the front door and said, I'll be back in 20 minutes. Have a list of everything that we can do. And that trust and that excitement for his new systems all came from me being at his other home a couple years prior. And we did do a tankless and we did do water treatment. And that was when I was kind of first stepping into that realm of upgrades and life improving stuff. And he ended up, it was $30,000. And still
Wow.
to this day, I mean, that was probably a year and a half ago, year ago. He's absolutely over the moon. Can't can't wait to tell people about it. I did a tankless for his neighbor. Like it's the referrals, the reviews, the tips, the resounding applause that they'll give when you improve their life rather than just solve a small issue. I would want to show the old me that stuff. I would want to show them that.
How would you convince OJ, we'll call old Jack instead of JJ, Jack Johnston, that Jack loves JJ? Oh, by the way,
That's real cute, man.
I texted a pic of you on the show here and into the plumbing group, and they're all throwing you thumbs up. But Cisco said, "Tell Nate I said fly Eagles fly."
Yeah, my guy.
saw you rocking the shirt. So, how would you convince old Jack that? Because here's the problem with a good portion of the audience, I'll say, or the people who will hear this episode. That's for Jack, right? That's for that guy. That's not me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not built like that. And maybe there's a version of Jack that felt that same way. What would you say to him?
I mean, there's a few different ways that I would speak to me directly. They're probably not show appropriate,
Yeah, a little
but
more aggressive than you would talk to. Well, I've seen you
yeah,
around apprentices. It's probably not that much more aggressive.
that's true. Um, I always when I have people like I had a guy at a supply house and we were talking about cars and he asked what I drove and whatnot and I just kind of like wasn't really even making conversation with the guy and then the tankless that I was installing kind of came around and he was like, "Oh, how much did you get that guy for?" Whatever. And then I asked him, I said, "Hey man, have you ever taken your car to a mechanic?" He was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Right on. How would you feel if you left the lot and 4 days later the engine exploded because of something that you could have done that you chose not to, or that the mechanic rather didn't show you?" He's like, "I'd have been pissed." And I was like, "Yeah, man, That's how stupid you sound. And so I would, you know, like I would just tell people, look, you don't have to ram things down people's throat. People want to take care of their stuff. And if they don't, they one, have the option to say no, and two, they're probably not the type of clients that you want anyways. I would tell technicians that are afraid of sales or vehemently against sales, I would tell them you're you are the locked door between your clients and a perfect plumbing system, a perfect garage door, a perfect electrical system. You are that barricade getting in the way of them having awesome stuff. And that is a disservice to your clients. At the very least, open the door, show them what's on the other side, and then let them decide. You don't need to shove it down their throats. You just need to show them. And if you show them and they say no, fine. But more often than not, you'll show them and they'll certainly start to chip away at that list, if not knock the whole thing out. And now everyone feels better. The client has what they want. You got to do cool stuff and everyone feels better and wins in the end. So I would tell people, stop being that locked door between your client's perfect system and your weird desire to have them save money, I guess, feel like a better person. I don't know.
That's not that.
But it goes back to everything is self-serving. Everything is self-serving. And so if you choose that your clients don't get to hear about how awesome their system can be, that's just you making yourself feel better. That's you making yourself feel better about them not spending money on stuff that they probably would really enjoy.
Yeah, and not even, I'm going to take it down even to a lower gutter level than that, because, I mean, in a truck, when I started becoming successful in the selling side, and I would debate, you know, at Ferguson's or what have you, the other guys who trashed the Yes plumbing team in Vegas for being sales guys that did communication training and whatnot. And I was vocal about it. I was trying to, if I met you at Ferguson, I was trying to bring you on our team 100% in front of your whole crew. And so they would trash us and stuff. But I would say to myself back then, like, you really think you're doing the people a service. You're not doing them as big a service as you think, because I have way more handwritten letters from clients than you do. And you've been doing this longer than me. And I make way more money than you. But later, as I'm training techs now for 13 years, 12 years, whatever it's been, I find that it's much less about, I just really don't want my clients to have to spend any money, and much more about, I'm going to not use the coward word this time because I always get tons of hate messages on social. Just the thought of that hard conversation with the big numbers makes me want to curl up in a little ball and suck my thumb. So I convince, not really myself, I know better, but try to project out to the world that I'm such a caring, gentle person who loves people so much that if they need a toilet flapper, doggone it, that's all they're going to get. And I would never. But here's the thing. And I've had a lot of guys like this that I've worked with where I've like, let me ask you a question. If that client said, hey, you know what? My softener's 17 years old. Can you get me a brand new one and throw it in and just replace this toilet? I don't think it's worth it putting $100 into the flapper. Would you say no? Then shut the hell up. No, you wouldn't say no. You would reach out and take that money, and you would be so glad. And then you'd text everybody about how great of a sale you had or whatever. There's zero people who would go, put your debit card away, sir. I'm not doing that today. Is it working? Oh, it's working? Then no, we're not replacing it. That doesn't exist. So it's cowardice. I'm going to say it.
Cowards.
Yeah, you really lightened it up.
Cowardice.
Brian
It's just
Burton
cowardice.
called everyone cowards just now.
It's just I mean, I just say what it is because I was there, and I remember when I was getting stomped by Mike back in, and yes, the answer for everybody of why he beat us all the time was that he was saying and doing things that we were too good of people to say or do, and then I did a ride along with him. I'm like, nope, he's just freaking better than me, and he's less afraid to ask hard questions and have awkward conversations with people than I was. And the more I dipped my toe in the water, then my foot, then my whole leg, and started getting better at having conversations with people that I was afraid to have. It's not that they were afraid. It was me. The more I started selling, and the exponentially better my relationships got. Not like a little bit better, but I started having relationships with clients that were 1,000 times better than my old ones because I wasn't afraid to stay for a few more minutes and to help with the conversation about should we do this or should we not. Even when the answer is we should not, I would still be okay to sit and take that side of the table and say, in particular, it sounds like, guys, financially right now, this doesn't make sense. But let me promise you, we're not going anywhere. You guys get that stuff figured out. We'll be around, right? But most of the time, I'm on the other side of the table. Let's figure it out. Yeah, you guys can do it. You're fine.
I mean, my wife, Brian knows this. My wife is where I derive about 90% of my worldview and advice from. And she always says, people just want to be cared about. That's something that every single person wants. And so if you do take the extra few minutes to form a friendship, genuinely be interested in your homeowner, and genuinely care about them and their stuff, it's going to build relationships that are far stronger and far longer lasting than anything you could have ever built by being the Mr. Fix-It guy.
Yeah, and you think about the level you have to be on, and I've heard many of Jack's Rilla conversations, and the level of relationship you have to be at to say some of the things that I have said or will say on a call, to say some of the things that Jack says and gets away with on the call, or probably our superstar for that, Logan Altman, says and does on some of his calls. Like, you're not a guy who just walked in, looked at the equipment, didn't even sit down, wrote up 3 estimates and slapped the piece of paper on the kitchen counter and said, let me know if you want to do one. If not, no big deal, right? You've gone through some emotions with these people to be able to, like Logan, when the guy said, my wife's a nurse, she's unavailable, right? He's like, what hospital? She's like, Ephrata Hospital. He's like, really? I was the head of electrical maintenance there for 10 years or whatever. It's like, dude, those nurses are on their phone all day. Go ahead and give her a call to see if she answers. And he picks up the phone and calls her, and she answered. And he sold the system, right? Like, just like that. But you're not in a house for 6 minutes before you're saying or doing something like that, right? You've earned the right. And it oftentimes it just sounds like which one makes the most sense. And they're like, I think we're going to hold off. And to Jack's point about selling to friends is a whole lot easier than selling to customers, which is what he wanted the topic to be tonight. If I'm talking to somebody I just met 3 minutes ago and I've done no warm up, and I'm like, I think this one makes the most sense, and they're like, I think we're just going to hold off, right? I'm like, well, and I might have something to say, well, what's holding you up? What are we holding on for, right? But what if Nate said that to me? And I'm like, hold on for what? What do you mean you're going to hold off? This needs to be done.
Right.
We're just not going to have hot water, bro? How's Sarah going to feel when she and the kids get home and they're messy and she needs to give them a bath and you got cold water for it? What are you talking about? I'm going to hold off. Going to go to a hotel? Like, let's go, bro. Pick one. Right? And that's how you talk to your friends. And if you can get to a level where you're And I'm not saying you want to use that level of assertion on the majority of your calls, but if you can get to the level where that's how you're talking to the people in the home, which I oftentimes in the at least second half of my career did, and Jack is still in the first half of his career and he's already getting on that level with many people, well, your conversion rate is going to skyrocket, right? Because I want to be talked to like that by a service contractor who's in my house, right? Like I got that recently from our boy Jordan Ristoff. I'm like, I can't get this filter out of the whatever big filter in my ceiling in the loft outside my bedroom door. Big filter. It's got this bar across the center, and I cannot get this thing to pull out. And I feel like I'm about to rip the bar off or something. And he's like, "Well, bro, you got the micro power guards and the oxys and all this." He's like, "Why don't we just yank all those things out and put the big 5-inch filter on your unit in the attic?" And I'm like, "Bro, I don't know. I'm not going in there to change the filter." He's like, "I'm not saying that you got to go in there and change the filter. Like, we'll get someone over, throw them some cash. Like, come on, bro. What are you talking about? I'm not going to make you do that." That's how I want to be talked to by my service rep, not disrespectful, but right at the line of like, how ridiculous you sound right now. And you can only talk to somebody like that when you have a relationship, right? When there's a level of, if not friendship, at least the fact that you are the ultimate authority in this realm. At least in this conversation. Are there better plumbers out there than Jack? Probably.
No.
Are there better plumbers than Jack in the kitchen in the conversation he had with his second client today? Absolutely not. And he walks in that confidence, but you got to have one or the other. You just can't be timid and shy and nervous and not make a relationship, because you're just going to have a crappy conversion rate and you're not going to make it.
Yep.
So Jack, going back to something that you mentioned, you get a lot of your worldview from your wife, and God's blessing upon her in these final days of pregnancy, which is super difficult.
Thank you.
But like a big part of what she's talking about there was about caring for your client, and they say that sharing is caring, right? And I want to go back to something you said at the top of the show where you were talking about you made like a repair to a faucet or something like that, and then it flooded, right? Like it damaged, right? So again, reflecting back upon old Jack, new Jack would share with the client that, hey, this is in bad condition. I can fix this, yes, but here's what happens if that fix is not sufficient, or if other parts that I'm not fixing currently also go out, etc. Like, and you share all that. Not out of like some type of, your house is going to catch on fire, everything's going to flood. But I want to like, hey, I care enough to actually share this with you because of the potentials that could happen, and because I've seen it happen, and because here's what it looks like after it happens. And that's the last thing that I want to happen to you. Old Jack, did old Jack have that same perspective, or why was old Jack more inclined to repair and not even talk about other options and sharing things like replacement?
Well, looking back now, it's fear is what it is. Fear of, I'm sure rejection. I'm sure I was shopping out of my own pocket, things like that, things that we all do, especially in the beginning of our career. Um, I I do think that in terms of old Jack, he would have gone to the faucet, fixed the faucet, and just hope to God that that fixed it. And if it broke again, then call us back.
Hey, I did my best. What do you want
Yeah,
from me?
yeah, just kind of throwing your hands up. Look, I did my job. Whereas now, I have learned to build a genuine relationship with your homeowners, and it's to a point where almost every homeowner that I go out to, within the first 10 to 15 minutes, we're very friendly. We're joking, we're having a good time. Because at the end of the day, if I'm going to be in your house for an hour minimum, I also want to be having an okay time. And I don't want to feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I don't want you to feel like you have a stranger in your home. I want everyone to be very friendly. And now it's to the point where I'll walk up to a faucet and it has a drip on it or a bunch of corrosion or something like that. And I'll say, hey, man, check this out. And I'll show them whatever it may be. And I'll say, how do you feel about that? And usually they're like, that, I don't know, it looks terrible. And I'm like, dude, that's because it is terrible. And then I write it down. And then when it comes to options and showing them exactly what they can do, I bring them back and I say, look, we have a couple ways that we can go about this. We can try and fix it, but it's going to stay an attempt, or we can replace it. And I look at them and I say, that's what you should do. And so I'm not telling them what they have to do. I'm not telling them that it's mandatory or their house is going to flood. I'm telling them we have a couple ways we can go about this. This is the one you should do. And then I leave it completely up to them. And I think that having that conversation 4, 5, 6 years ago would have absolutely terrified me. But nowadays, it's the most comfortable part of my job, is getting to a point where I tell people, hey, we got 3 options. This is what you should do.
And it is terrifying in the beginning. Like any step you're taking in a positive direction in communication, right? For the older fellas, like when you first decided that you were interested in the opposite sex and you started to realize, although mom and everybody told me when I was little that I was gorgeous and girls were going to fall all over me, not been the case in my experience yet. And I'm actually going to go have to go up and approach and talk to a female to try to get her interested in me, right? And certainly the first time, probably the first many, many times, like you're frozen with fear. It's the hardest thing in the world. And you can't imagine not dying if you get rejected, right? And you do it, and realistically, hopefully you get rejected hard in the beginning. And because for me, and I orchestrated that with my son. I mean, I didn't orchestrate the rejection part, but when Ethan was young, if he was interested in somebody, I would make him go have that conversation and make him ask the girl to prom that would feel almost impossible. And I'd make him role play it with his older sister in our kitchen beforehand. So he'd at least have the words would actually come out and he wouldn't just like vomit on himself standing there. And the first few times were rejection. And then now let's recap, and I'm not going to like lick your wounds with you, but what I am going to say is I'm proud of you for trying, for failing as much as I am for trying, bro. Because the best thing that could happen to you in that circumstance is you went after it, you got rejected, hopefully hard, and you realized I did not die. It did not kill me. It physically didn't even hurt me. I know your belly hurts. That's going to go away. You're going to get in tomorrow and you're going to realize it's whatever. Like most of the school's not going to know about it. If she's really cruel, she told a few people that are going to make fun of you. That's going to go away pretty quickly and you're going to be fine. And the guy who ends up winning is the guy who has taken so many of those that they don't hurt anymore, right? That there's no feeling attached to it anymore. And that is what we have to do in this same type of situation. It's like Jack looks back to a few years ago when if he attempted that conversation, he might have been frozen in fear. And he didn't go out and have that conversation. He went out and had a tiny little fraction of that conversation, enough times that it worked. And then he added a little bit more and then a little bit more. And now he's to the point where Jack has some pretty wild Loganisms, as we used to call them, as well. I'd love to hear some of those, Jack.
Probably.
What's your most recent one?
My most recent one? Uh, I mean, last week, or was it the week before? I don't know. It was in the last couple weeks. Um, it was a water treatment estimate for a guy who I had been talking to this guy about water treatment for a few years now, and he had like a Kinetico system that was working, but it was the only thing that we hadn't touched, and it like was starting to get like the corrosion around the joints and stuff like that. And so finally, I was like, "Hey man, look, I'm gonna build you some options for water treatment." And he's like, "All right, fine." And I built him three options. One was a complete, one was a combo system, and then one was just a softener. And he was like, "All right, well, I'm just going to do the softener." And I go, "Hey, man, if you like doing things halfway, then by all means, do you." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, "You know exactly what I mean, John." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, "You know that there's chlorine remover in this system, don't you?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's this one right here." And I go, "Are we downgrading today or what are we doing?" And he was like, "All right, do the combo system." And we did the combo system a couple days later.
Nice.
There was the one guy who said, "You don't need water treatment in Arizona." And I looked at him and I said, "Now, did that sound the way you wanted it to when it came out?" And he went, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Did that sound as smart as you thought it would?" And he went, "It did not." And I was like, "I know, because of all this stuff that we have to prove it, right?" And he was like, "All right." And then I went, "Need and want are different things, but in Arizona, with everything falling apart, kind of becomes a need, doesn't it?" And he was like, "Yeah." And we did that water treatment. I mean, I got a bunch of them, man. I told a guy it was the second time I had replaced one of his water heaters. He had three in his house, and they had like six people, seven people living in this house. And yeah, I told him, I said, "Look, man, if you want to keep me busy replacing tanks because you guys beat them to death, by all means, I'll be here. Or we could do tankless." And he started talking about a negative experience that they had and whatever. And I go, "Well, that's because I'm not their plumber. Why
Mm,
don't you have me take
yeah.
care of it? And then you can forget about all that noise." And that was one of the guys who gave me like a big tip, raving review. And I actually did a tankless for his neighbor as well. So
Oh
it's,
man.
but I mean, it's just the forwardness that you can have with people when you get so friendly with them. You know, like, "Oh, I didn't know we were doing things halfway around here." And
Yeah.
he was like, "What?" And I was like, "I mean, once you get on a level with people like that, man, you can kind of say not whatever you want, but you can kind of say whatever you want. And it, one could argue it builds credibility when you're able to just let things fly.
It builds credibility because it's brutal honesty.
Yeah,
And honesty does build credibility, but you can't just walk into somebody's home and be that honest. Like you have to have established a friendship there and I think that it's a revolving door, so to speak, where you can be brutally honest with me as well. Right. And
yep,
they need to know that up front, but it's difficult to just come out and say something like that and for it to be understood. That's why I've always felt like GACA, the opening statement, upfront contract, intentionality statement, whatever you want to call it, that we use, it's like it's a minute, right? Probably less. But my warm up process then is significantly longer. I'm going to stretch it as long as I can because I need to feel the anxiety between you and me is gone, because I know if I feel it's gone, you feel it's gone. And now I feel like we
absolutely.
have that flow where we can be real with each other. So even to this day, if I do an interview with someone, anyone else, it's almost always been, other than Aaron Buckwalter, he was great with this. Anyone I do an interview with, they're trying to move to the point of the interview really quickly, right? And I'm like, we're still talking about his family. like what his goals are for the future, how he got here to sitting in this conference room. And I'm telling him a little bit about my journey. And I want to be on the level where if he says something stupid, I can say, did that sound to you how you thought it was going to, right? You have to be on a certain level to have that conversation. So yeah, it's a great point. Great story. Jack always has some really good, man, yesterday was a tough one. And we're like, well, you got the sale. Oh yeah, it got good, but it started tough. And here's what happened. So, always my favorite.
Yeah. No, I mean, it can take a while to build those relationships. But it's so impactful to everyone once you do. You got to think of it too, like you get to a house and people are going to have their walls up. That's what it is. They have their walls up. They don't expect to become your friend today. But once they do, then there's a trust, there's a credibility built, and a client for life. I mean, the amount of times that I run calls where Jack was requested, Jack only calls. It's all the time. Those can be a bit of a pain when I've been there 6 times and everything is upgraded. But
game on, baby. Game on.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. And you know what? If I know that I've done nothing but right by them and they've chose to trust me with everything that I've done at their home, then I'm more than happy to go check on it for them. I'm more than happy to just hang out for an hour, make sure everything's still okay.
And what does the opposite of the warm up look like? So what we're talking about is whatever amount of time it takes is the amount of time that it takes until the anxiety wall between me and the guy I'm interviewing for a position, or the tech and his client, or the manager and the technician that we have to have a tough conversation with, write up or what have you. Whatever the amount of time is what the amount of time is. What we can't do is just straight up skip it, right? And we were talking about this at Aaron Hagen's Sparky shop here in Phoenix recently. I had Dylan Moya was visiting us and training with us for a few days, and we took him down there and blew everybody's minds for us a little bit. But we were talking about this, and I brought up, Nate, you've seen Beautiful Mind, right? Russell
Yes,
Crowe.
sir.
Great movie, right?
You bet.
Remember the bar scene?
It's been a bit.
All right. So Russell Crowe and his boys are sitting around playing pool, drinking beer at the bar. Beautiful lady and her 2 friends walk in, and the beautiful woman looks right at Russell Crowe and smiles. And all of the boys look at each other and go, oh, here we go, crash and burn time. So Russell Crowe goes, I got this. Now he's like a savant mathematician, very low on the people skills. And he thinks he's going to close without a warm-up. So he walks right up to her and he says, I don't know what all I have to say to you so that we can have sex, but can we just assume that I said all those things and skip right to that part? And she goes, oh, that was sweet. Pa! smacks the crap out of him, right? And then storms off like she should. And I don't know, maybe not the best analogy, but probably now my favorite analogy. I debated whether I was going to say it on the show or not, because we love that clean rating. I think it's still a clean rating, right? That wasn't too much.
I think you should put it on the show.
It's on the show, bro. I'm not cutting it. There's no way. So, I mean, I don't edit the show anyway, so I wouldn't even, there's nothing I can do. What I'm thinking is, should we post that clip of that amazing movie before the episode? I know YouTube won't let us, but somebody might.
100%.
Well, Jack, this has been really great. And speaking of relationships, I'm sure there's somebody in your house that's probably looking for a foot rub as a recompense for what you did to her. So you probably want to attend to that. And so I'm going to wrap it up here for you with just one final question. If there's a couple on that sales interest scale, if there's a couple 3s listening right now, and they're like, all right, I hear what you're saying. I'm interested. I'm not ready to ask somebody if they think they sounded like an idiot when they just said something. That's like a 10. I'm not quite there yet. but I might be open to stepping towards a 4 or a 5. What is some advice for where they can start and how they can begin that journey that you did so many years ago?
Just try it a few times and see how they react. The biggest thing is it's gonna be fear of rejection, shopping out of your own pocket, stuff like that. Just try it a few times. You're not gonna get your head ripped off. You're just not. Those people are gonna pick cool stuff that they can do to their system, and they are gonna be far more appreciative afterwards. Just try it a few times. Don't be forceful. Don't do anything that you think the big bad salesmen do. Just give it a shot. Just offer it. Just show them it even exists. Watch how many of them purchase it and watch how many of them are far more appreciative afterwards. That's what I would tell someone who's sitting at a 3 or a 4. Don't push it. Just show them it exists and watch how grateful they are afterwards.
Sound advice to wrap us up on, Jack. And I encourage you to listen to what Jack is saying and to take some of the steps that he has shared in his journey today, as well as the encouragement that he has there. Jack, we appreciate you spending your evening with us. I encourage you to get some rest because that's all going to disappear here shortly.
Yeah.
And but you're going to be
you.
great. You're killing it in the field, man. You're going to kill it at home as a dad. I can hear that in what you're talking about and the heart that you have. So thanks so much for joining us and sharing such great advice for our listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Honor to be here. Love what you guys are doing for the trades. Love Waste No Day. Love Blue Collar Closer. I mean, it gave me the life that I'm able to give my family now. So thank you guys very much for having me.
Yeah. If you want more of Jack, and I assure you, you do, because it's always a favorite for everybody in the Blue Collar Closer group when Jack guest hosts the Thursday Q&As. Join us in bluecollarcloser.com, and you'll get plenty of Jack in there. Some might say too much Jack in there.
Yeah.
And you'll see him on the occasional Q&A.
Love it. That's a great place to leave it there, Brian. Thank you so much, Jack, again. And we hope that you did enjoy the episode. If you did, let him know, share it around. I'm sure he is in Blue Collar Closer, but I'm sure he's in the Facebook group as well. And you can, of course, share this episode with some of the 3s in your life that you think could have a career trajectory and horseshoe background like Jack did, all for the better, not only for those friends of yours, but also for their clients as well. We're going to leave it here with our weekly challenge, which continues to be the same: to choose to wake up each and every morning and waste no day.